All right, so g'day and namaste. I am kind of funny making more than one video in a week, let alone more than one video in a year at this point, but I've been inspired to draw. Thanks very much, Peter Draws. I have been inspired to draw. I have been drawing. So I thought I'd show a little bit of it. And this is, I believe, the sort of second part, if you will, to the video that I made yesterday, that I actually didn't get to talk about all the things that I wanted to, which is kind of funny because I thought when I was looking at the video, I was about to edit it, and it was over 10 minutes long, and I thought, oh, you know, it's a lot of airtime to fill when you know, you got a time lapse running, and that's a lot of space, I guess, to just do a voiceover. So I wrote down some things, some thoughts, some things that were wandering around in my brain, just with a new, a calligraphy pen that I picked up secondhand. Fun pen, and just really enjoying using that. But I started writing down things to talk about in that discussion yesterday. And the funny thing about it is I literally only got through a few things before the video of the time lapse had actually finished. So that meant that I actually had a few things that I wanted to talk about yesterday that I didn't get a chance to. So instead of having too much time, I actually ran out of time. So I thought I'd make a companion video, a secondary video, and give myself a chance to complete my thought, I guess. But also show off a couple of the drawings that I've been doing in the last couple of days. So let's start here, why not? This is pretty much the next drawing that I did after the demo drawing that you've already seen. And over here in the corner, I've just followed Peter's advice on using little thumbnails. So just set up a little area, a little grid here, just to have some little thumbnails going. Got out the calligraphy pen, which is a bit faster or a bit more liquid than the fountain pen that I've been using to do this line work. And so I just got out the calligraphy, just did some very quick little drawings. Just had the idea of a little sort of Moebius inspired sci-fi kind of landscape, just thinking about different sorts of structures, how you could make a different type of structure depending on a different type of environment, different gravities, all those kind of things. So just sort of speculating in a sci-fi sort of sense, and yeah, use these little boxes to just do some real quick scribbles with a fast pen. And after I'd done those quick scribbles with a fast pen, just had a look at them, sort of assess them, which one felt the best to me, and picked this little guy here. I guess a little sort of not a tripod, it'd be a monopod, as in just it has one leg. So just like the shape of it and the angle. So took the small thumbnail, blew it up a little bit, just did a larger scale. Some of the black in here is actually a paint pen. Let me find it for you, just so you can see what we're talking about here. Yeah, so just a paint pen. Again, when I was in Officeworks or the supply store the other day, just looking around at things that they had and things that I didn't have, it's always a good idea to go to the discount bin, which is what I did. And so having a look at the discount bin was the reason that I came across these two products. So yeah, I've used many different types of acrylic paint and paint pens in the past, big graffiti pens, big sort of crink ink nibs and all those kind of things. So I've used a lot of big pens in the past, but I don't remember ever having used that Born brand. So I picked those up, and a cheap calligraphy set. That was just something that was again cheap in the discount bin. It had been opened or something like that. All the nibs were fine. Everything was fine about it. Had blue ink in it to begin with, which is why the ink is blue. I'll use that up, and then once that ink has run through, I'll put some new black ink in it. So that's going to be good. Just trying to sort of match all the materials that I'm using. So I guess this drawing, yeah, some of the black areas here are the paint pen, acrylic paint pen, and then filled in with the fountain pen and just some regular black ink. And this drawing worked out okay. I mean, it's still a little bit flat. I don't like everything that's happening in it, but I do like some elements of it. You know, obviously you could always get geometry more perfect, get perspective more perfect. You can never, you know, unless you're fully drafting it out with a lot of guidelines and doing sort of an architectural type drawing, I guess, is it's sort of leaning more into, you know, your perspective is always going to be a bit skewed, and your circles are never going to be absolutely perfect. And I did all this freehand, so if I'd been using a tool or something like that, I might have been able to get it a little bit more perfect as far as the perspective goes. But it was just playing with this idea of an alien landscape and the kind of, I don't know, outpost you'd have on that. And so I've just got a few alien type things, I guess you could say, happening in this one. But that was just fun. And that actually didn't take that long. Once, you know, I started with the big black areas, I really just knocked them in really quickly. Bit of pencil. I started, you know, with a really quick pencil version of the thumbnail. Worked straight over the pencil. I again wanted to sort of test the materials to see what would happen if I had a pencil drawing sitting underneath ink, and then if I put ink on top, what would happen? Is it going to smudge? Is it going to tear? This is just regular sketchbook paper, so a fairly thin GSM. It's a little thicker than your photocopying paper, and a little bit more bonded. It's a bit closer to watercolor paper, but it's just your standard sketchbook, student sketchbook paper. So there's nothing special about it at all. So I just wanted to see what would happen, trying to remove pencil marks. You can see some of them didn't quite get removed after you'd inked it, and just to test those effects. So that came out okay. Again, really just playing with the materials, seeing what can happen when I'm just sort of absent-mindedly drawing. And, you know, part of this idea is, well, how do you improve? And I spoke in my other previous video about listening to the voice that comes out of my mouth. Well, you know, I'm an art teacher and I'm teaching people how to draw, and pretty successfully. I'm getting some pretty good results out of the students, and I always give an exit form or a feedback form at the end of projects just to see how they felt about things, and whether my advice helped or didn't help, and I invite them to be as honest as they can in that feedback. And so in listening to that, looking at some of that feedback, I realized I have been pretty successfully improving my students' drawings through the things I've been saying and the adjustments and advice I've been giving. So that means I need to listen to that advice myself. So again, just playing with mediums and looking at the way the different material acts when you do different things, looking at things like repetition and trusting the process. I guess that's what I was trying to talk about in the previous video. It was just the process itself is a thing unto itself. And I know it's pretty easy to drift off into abstract expressionism or performance art or what have you, installations and those sorts of things. It's pretty easy to drift off into contemporary art when you're talking about the experiential side of art, just the idea of how you feel when you look at something, or how you feel when you make something, and that the process is everything. And yeah, I lean towards that, but there's also this idea of trusting the actual process itself, you know, just doing the practice. It's like almost like a Zen Buddhist idea of just like sharpening the sword, just doing it every day, a little bit, just grinding. And then through that grind, through that process, you'll find something, or something will find you. And so I guess that's, you know, I find it hard to meditate, but I guess I'm meditating quite a bit when I draw. Funnily enough, the opposite effect is sort of happening bodily though with me, because when I draw, I tend to hold my breath a lot. I don't know if anyone else does this, but you know, when I'm doing a fine line, I find that I am holding my breath quite a bit, and and that's not good. You know, I've done a bit of target shooting before and hunting and those sorts of things, so I know how to use a firearm, and so it's really interesting when you're looking through a telescopic lens or something like that with a firearm and trying to make all the mental calculations that you have to make to hit your target at a distance. One of the things that they talk a lot about is how you breathe and breathing through the shot instead of holding your breath, because the longer you hold your breath, the more your body actually shakes. The more you shake, the more your body sort of wants to shake, and so you have to train yourself into taking in a deep breath when you're looking down the sight, and then actually, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, people out there who are good shooters, marksmen, my apologies. Yeah, but upon wanting to actually fire, you let the breath out. You in a slow way, in a controlled manner. You take your breath in while you're looking down the sight, but as soon as you feel like you want to actually release the shot, then you also to evenly release your breath. And at a point there during the release of the breath, that's when your body is the most stable, and any minor shakes that you have in your body will be dissipating by that point, and that's when the perfect time to actually fire, actually pull the trigger. So it's interesting with drawing. I've found a similar kind of thing starting to happen. This is on bleed-proof paper and a couple of Copic pens. I guess you're all fairly familiar with these. I just borrowed these from school because a lot of the students at school use this kind of material, and so I just wanted to sort of test it out a little bit on this bleed proof to see how good it goes, just because they're into manga and those sorts of things, so they like the Copics. Yeah, so I'm finding a similar thing with drawing, that when I breathe properly, my lines are very different, and you can see here this sort of Moebius esque style little landscape that I just did with a felt tip pen. That's not even with a fountain pen, just a regular 0.05 felt tip. And yeah, so I found myself just breathing differently and trying to breathe differently as I was actually trying to make the lines. And again, looking at the difference between hatching and cross hatching, and I used to love cross hatching, but it turns out I was kind of using it as a bit of a crutch. There'd be an area that I'd draw, and if I didn't like that area, I'd fill it with cross hatching, because I was able to sort of mask out my mistakes, or so I thought, with cross hatching. So I actually really don't like it now, personally. I don't, some other people use it very well, but I don't know. I don't enjoy it as much. I think there's a way to, again, referencing that clean line style, the your Tintin and your Moebius and your Belalangke type of clean line drawing. There's a way of using clean line that doesn't require cross hatching. There's a way of doing it that you can use it to both imply shadow and shadow depth and value, and also do texture at the same time. That's going to take a long time to learn. So obviously here I'm looking at that kind of work. And when I talk about copying and those sorts of things, it's going to be my job when I have enough time over the weekend, if I do, to actually do some copying. Now, is copying cheating? No, well, yes and no. Okay, obviously someone else has already done the hard work for you and figured out how to make the lines, but is there still something to be gained from copying? And yes, I really do sincerely believe that there is. I don't think you should be doing it your whole art career, and I certainly don't think it's ultimately the only practice you should be doing, but there is something to be learned from looking at other people's work, particularly the work of people you admire or aspire to, or people that you know are extremely good at the thing that you want to do. So if I'm looking at Moebius here, for example, then I'll also be looking at someone like Hokusai as well, because the masters are the masters for a reason. And looking at their work, one of the things you don't, you obviously you're copying, so you're really just tracing over somebody else's stuff. But what I'm looking at and what I'm mostly interested in is, why did they make the decisions that they made at that particular moment? When they're looking for a certain effect, why did they choose to do, why did they choose to do that line there? Why is that line there the line that they chose? Okay, they're still following all the basic art rules that I tell all my kids. There's only sort of 3 values of shade between white, pure black. So there's only 2 greys in between, generally speaking. They're following all the rules that I set out. But still, what was the decision making behind using dots here as opposed to straight lines here? What information is being told to us by these little creases, these little rounded lines that they're using versus the straight line, right? So there's a lot to be learned from copying someone else's work. Because I think when you start making the lines yourself, you'll realize that, oh, okay, you get an insight into the decision-making process. And I've heard a lot of writers actually do this, and this might sound a bit weird to people who've never heard this concept before. And the idea being that someone like Hunter S. Thompson, for example, he loved, I think, like Hemingway and those kind of writers. And so to get the rhythm of Hemingway's writing, he would actually sit down and retype on an old typewriter Hemingway's work. And in doing so, in this one biography that I read about Hunter S. Thompson, he, said he would find the rhythm in the writing, the way that the typewriter actually sounded and felt in his hand, the speed at which he would type, the end of the page when you'd have to do a page break, and all those sorts of things. He found insight into writing by copying. And also too, I mean, the other thing about looking at artists like Moebius, and I'm going to wait till I've got a little light table until I try and copy this one, because I literally want to trace it and find his lines. One of the other things about doing this kind of work is, an artist like Moebius, for example, you can look at online and yeah, the artwork is phenomenal, it's gorgeous, it looks really great on the computer, it's beautiful and clean with these nice transitions, it looks so modern in a lot of ways, even though he was using a handheld airbrush to do his gradients and his transition in his artwork, not a computer that can just flood fill and a gradient like we get to use these days. He's all doing it all by hand and masking out all the areas and stuff like that. But you can't see that on the computer because obviously it was made so perfectly. But what's interesting about looking at a printout of one of his works and turning it into black and white is, again, you see it as an actual drawing. I think the original of this would have been quite a bit bigger and then photographed or scanned in and used. So I'm assuming that the original could have been a much larger drawing when it started its life. But when you look at a drawing like this in front of you on paper, just in grayscale or black and white, and it's just lines on a page, similar to lines on a page that you could make, I think that's when a lot of the true genius actually comes through. And also, it gives you the opportunity to see areas where the artist either got lazy or, I mean, mistake. I don't really like using the word a mistake, but, didn't do something as good as they could have, or made a decision that you wouldn't have made or that you would have made differently. So I find that really interesting, and that's worth exploring. That's worth understanding, because yes, copying is just copying. But in a wonderful book that I read about Kahuna culture and the spiritual culture of the Pacific Islands, and particularly Hawaii, one of the ideas that came out of that was that everything in life is polar, is binary, like it's two ends of the same stick. And, kind of like a magnet in a sense. It's one magnet, but it has two polar ends that, you know, attract and distract each other, that there's a push and pull to everything. And one of the concepts that was talked about through that that book was the idea that creativity, you know, when you look at the creativity stick or the art making stick, one end of that stick is pure insight, personal genius, completely unique things. The other end of it is imitation, right? So the balancing act, or the two polar ends of the creative process, are imitation, just completely imitating something that you've seen before, or just aping things that you've experienced before, or referencing things, or digesting things, you know, that imitation edge, that copying side of things. And then the pure creativity. And a lot of artists that I've talked to in my lifetime have discussed the problem between making work and then going, oh, it looks too derivative, it's too much like this person's work, or this is too far off somebody's work that I was inspired by or looking at, and therefore I don't like it. It's too unique, or it's too imitative, too derivative. So it's an interesting balancing act, and that's one of the things that has really become apparent to me over the last, let's say a week or so, that I've been like drawing every day when I get home from work for a couple of hours. And that's one of the things that's really come through to me and really rung true as far as why you make art, at the part of the creative process, the life cycle of making art. You know, you might be inspired to begin with, and then it just becomes hard work, and then you hate it, and then you let it go, and then you come back again, and then you find something new, and you cycle around. You go up and down the mountain and in and out of the valley. And great book about that sort of concept is, of course, The Artist's Way by Julia somebody, I can't remember. I loaned it out to somebody and it never came back, of course. Been many years since I read that book, but I should probably pick that up again in discussing and thinking about these kind of ideas about the process and life cycle of each artwork as you make it. Because I was loving this drawing to begin with. There's rock shapes, I was digging them. I really liked these birches as I started to put those in. Didn't mind what was happening behind. But the second I put the foliage on, the second that cross-hatching started to come into it, this little bit of grass down here, hated it. Okay, can't look at this now because all I see is the errors, which is funny. Okay, that's probably enough for today. I'll just do some drawing now. See you later.